Ladies and gentlemen, when the concept of Occupy Wall Street emerged during the last few months, and many other calls for redefining the social and political framework for societies all over the world started, I argue that the concept of occupation of media has been already accomplished. So people have already occupied media. And this occupation is actually a smart one. And this occupation is soft. And it has generated great transformation within this profession without a lot of violence. The concept of occupying the media, in fact, was much more smart than the concept of occupying the economy. Because in the occupation of the media, first, the alternative was established, and then the shift took place and the occupation took place. While we still have to see the alternative for the occupation of the economy and politics and international politics that everyone is trying to accomplish during the last few years. To occupy media, people have empowered themselves with the tools of communication and technology. And I argue that this is the moment that we are living in now is the beginning of the alternative. Since the finalization of the first phase of mass media and the traditional media has come to a conclusion, I think we should start launching, conceptually at least, and technically, the second phase of new media, which I would like to call it the integral media. Integral media for me is the intersection between three major trends that meet in the middle. At the middle, there is another circle. The three major trends are, first, the content, second, the technology, and third, the finance. At the middle of it, there are the people. People have become part of the above three mainstreams, and in my opinion, this combination of the three high streets and the circle in between is going to generate the concept of integral media. When it comes to content, we have used a certain way of doing content. When I say we, I mean professional journalists. We have been doing this for the last few decades, and we have not been challenged, actually, on the way that we have been doing it. So people had no choice but to sit and watch us or read what we write, and then if they don't like what we do, they move to another person or another institution, but following also the same methodology and the same style and the same system. Right now, things have changed. Content will continue, in my opinion, to be the king. And people will always appreciate excellent content. They will always appreciate accuracy, integrity. They will always appreciate the fact that the journalist is trying to dig the fact, and he is trying as well to distance himself, his ideology, his perspective, and his way of thinking from the content that he is dealing with. So honesty and integrity combined with balance and responsibility will continue to be the driving force behind the content, and I think people will continue to appreciate what good journalists and good journalism is all about. However, it is not journalists who are now delivering the content. As you know, the content at this moment in time on most of the platforms is delivered between people who have professional skills and people who have started to generate the content from the public. So the masses have started to come up with their own narrative of reality, their own understanding of reality, and their own reporting of the fact as they see it. And this increasingly has become integral part of not the alternative, what has been called, if you remember this terminology, a few years ago, we used to call something which is not professional, we used to call it alternative media. The word alternative media, in my opinion, does not exist anymore because of this new integration. So what has been alternative a few years ago has started to make its way to mainstream media and to traditional media. Therefore, we feel at this moment in time that our screens are occupied actually by content that is generated by the public, citizen journalism and participants and internet activists and political activists and whoever would like to put his opinion or report the fact or narrate the story through his cell phone or his mobile video camera and so on. This is good news, not bad at all. Definitely, as every revolution in the world, every occupation in the world, we are going to go through some kind of difficult path, some kind of complexity. In order to shift from a paradigm to another, there will be turbulence. At this moment in time, we are going through this turbulence. This turbulence definitely will upset the well-established conventional wisdom about professional journalism, and it will upset the excellent leaders of journalism who have been doing this for the last few decades. But definitely, this is the way to go, and there is no turn away or turn back from this trend. We need to live with it, we need to understand it, and we need to accommodate it within a new framework, which I call the integral media, because classical, traditional media will not be able to embed this new arrival into its DNA and create or generate the content based on the philosophy of the crowdsourcing. Now, so the content has been a challenge. But content, we also as professional journalists did not do our best during the last few years. I think we have been too busy establishing our brands, too busy establishing or inflating our bank accounts, too busy at the same time associating ourselves with centers of power, and too busy establishing from us an elite that for a large, in my opinion, for a long time has dissociated itself from the masses. I understand journalism with mission and with passion and with preference towards the human being. However, with commercialization and politicization of media, we dissociated ourselves from the mission of the public, and we started and structured a new mission that converted us into elite. This is why the masses are occupying our circles, and they feel happy about it, and they enjoy it. And frankly speaking, during the last few years, there was some kind of hostility towards traditional media, because people felt that we are not breaching the message of profession and the message of the mission. We have been actually trying to establish ourselves as a player in the scene rather than witnesses of the game itself. So let us welcome the arrival of the new content. However, the challenge of converting this new content into something with substance, something with great traditional, moral, and ethical foundations is necessary, because lying is lying. Regardless if a journalist lie or someone send you a lie over the internet, eventually it is not accurate. Lack of accuracy is wrong, regardless if it is generated by the public or generated by a newsroom. And at the same time, extreme passion that convert the story into some kind of advocacy rather than narrating it as it's supposed to be to enable people to judge. This is wrong, regardless who generated that. So what I think will happen and should happen, that those who are generating content from the people themselves will be more professional. And those who are generating content in the newsroom will be more people-centered. We reach a point where all of us could understand the priorities, because people will bring us back to what we should be as journalists, those who advocate the cause of the human being and the interests of the public. And at the same time, we are going to help those who are generating the content to get themselves more organized as far as professional standards are concerned. This is where the middle point will be in the next few years. Newsrooms, who have become as well some kind of a shrine for those who would like to call themselves professional journalists and to dictate how journalism would look like, in my opinion, will start losing power for the sake of the field. Again, welcome that. Because newsrooms, because of its dissociation from the field, has started seeing the world through its own narrative, through a screen of a computer that a journalist or a producer sits in front of and trying to interpret events far from the actual decision makers, the public. People who are at this moment in time becoming much more active through the Arab Spring in the region and internationally through this new movement of mobilization that is taking place in economy and politics. So newsrooms will shrink. They will continue to exist. There will be a necessity for a newsroom because a newsroom will add two important elements, at least amongst many. The first one is prioritization. And prioritization will be necessary with the flood of news and information that is coming through social networks. People might be puzzled by the amount of data and the amount of news that come through social networks. Therefore, a newsroom is necessary, but the task of the newsroom is not going to be the running order based on preferences of journalists, but it will be put based on the interest of the public and the strategic weight of the news that we receive. That is also very important and very necessary. Therefore, in order to accomplish this most important task of prioritization, we need to convert our journalists and editors into also not political scientists, but at least people who have good knowledge of international politics, of contextual analysis of the news, which means history, which means the importance of the story and how to locate the story within a good framework. I call that journalism of depth. Our newsrooms will become like think tanks. The news, when it comes to the newsroom, is going to be taken by qualified journalists who have deep knowledge of politics and international politics and convert that into a story within a context. Because social networks so far did not deliver great context. They are delivering sometimes fragmentation of news. And in my opinion, fragmentation of news is not going to be helpful to develop proper, solid framework of analysis for reality. Otherwise, we will be puzzled by a lot of things. Newsrooms can have the talent of contextualization and the talent of prioritization. These are very important for the future newsroom that we'll see in the next 4 to 10 years. When we move from content to technology, technology at this moment in time is going also to generate new opportunities, but also it will as well create new challenges. I do see that the trend within social networks during the next 5 years will be data mining. Data mining is going to be the most important commodity for social networks. Within this framework of data mining, the new giant organizations and companies will be able to collect data about each and every one of us that is huge, and that will enable them commercially in the future to end the concept of broadcasting and to start another concept of personalized casting. Each and every one of us is going to have his own TV station. Each and every one of us is going to have his content delivered to him based on his interest and based on his character. That is going to come up also with a challenge for traditional organizations and for the people who are used to the traditional way of delivering the news from one side. Technology as well is coming up with the 4th generation of internet. Video is not going to continue low quality at all. We are used now to see the images coming from Syria, for example, on a professional screen like Al Jazeera, but these images are actually shaking, and who cares? Eventually you are narrating a story, so it doesn't really matter very much because facts are there. In fact, this shaking image are actually is actually giving some kind of authenticity and excitement to the public. However, in my opinion, very soon, what you are going to see on the screens generated by the public is going to be high definition and it's going to be high resolution. And technology will support that, not only through the new cameras that are installed in smartphones, but also through the broadband and cheaper version of streaming that most of our countries are moving towards. So the next 4 to 5 years, we are going to see this kind of fiber optics and the broadband and the fourth generation all over the world, speeding giving much better chance for us to communicate. The third trend within the technology and social networking is actually going to be video. I think the video will start very soon, pick up much more than the text. And people is going to generate much more video than ever, going to communicate with each other through video. They are going to give the comments on the news through video. And they are going to give their news and their analysis and their views and their stories and personal engagement in life through video. That's going to be a major issue. It's easier, faster, quicker, and much more personal. So I see this as a third trend within social networks and within new platforms emerging. Now, where actually the role of journalism as we know it and the newsroom as we know it ends, and where the role of social networks and IT companies and new integrators start. I argue that for both spheres to prosper, we need to have some kind of division of labor. So those who are providing content should specialize in providing the content, in generating the content. I mean, professional newsrooms and traditional media should enhance the way that it does produce the news and the content. And those who are busy developing technical platforms should also concentrate on developing technical platforms rather than getting themselves involved in the content. In this case, we can have much better quality on both ways. We have much better content and we have much better platforms and technology platforms. Otherwise, I see in front of us chaos. This chaos at this moment in time is taking place. So in order to get ourselves listening or watching something reasonable, something that could enhance our understanding and knowledge of the world, I think we need excellent content. And for us to be more, interactive, dynamic, more engaging, we need excellent platforms. Both of them do not contradict each other if we separate the scope of work for each one of them. Technology will enable journalists to get feedback. In this case, it will enable them to get much more depth and knowledge. Give you one example. In my opinion, in order to enhance content, there are two trends that we should start pressing within our newsroom. The first one is investigative journalism, which is dying away, and investigative journalism is shrinking in order to replace it with much more superficial and simplistic concept of immediacy that our newsrooms are producing. To feed a screen of 24 hours, you feed it with hundreds of items every day, and most of the items are generated by the moment. So there is immediacy, and they are superficial because there is short span of understanding them. There is no follow-up. We don't follow up on the stories. Once we put it in the screen, another story will break, and then we are going to follow the second story. The first story will live for a few hours, 1 day, 2 days, but everyone is going to forget about it. This does not serve the cause of humanity, in fact. What serves the cause of humanity is to have excellent follow-up, excellent depth of understanding the story, excellent context. And in my opinion, investigative journalism is major element in producing excellent content. It takes more time, more research, more context, but at the same time, you deliver something that really could benefit the human being in getting to understand his reality much better. The second trend within the content enhancement is the field work. through professional journalists who, again, are in contact with reality and who can really deliver stories and deliver events through professional lenses to the public. This is why professional journalism, in my opinion, will tend to be more investigative and more field-centered rather than newsroom-centered. When we go to the social networks, again, there are new trends that, in my opinion, should take place. The first one, I appreciate communication. I love it. It's very important. It adds flavor to our life. But definitely, there is a huge amount of superficiality as well within social networks. There is a huge amount of fragmentation. And there is some kind of trivial interests that might consume time, and at the same time divert people from great thoughts and ideas. I wonder, in this age of Facebook and Twitter, how many people are trained to read in-depth articles or books or something called philosophy, if you remember it, or something called science, political science, social science. Aren't we becoming superficial? Aren't we promoting some kind of communication that trains our mind to give up on depth, and it trains our mind to be much more concentrating on short sentences, sound bites, and the culture of the Twitter characters that actually each one of us now start to appreciate? So I wonder if that kind of culture is going to really bring to our minds much better understanding of the world. I'm afraid that we are not actually getting much better understanding of the world. We get much better understanding of each other. Maybe we get much better understanding of our opinion, people's opinion. How do we communicate? People's news sometimes. But definitely, those amongst us who would like really to deliver great journalism to the world, they should not be satisfied neither with Wikipedia as the most important source of news, nor with the Twitter as the source of breaking news. I think we need to do a little bit much more than that in order to get to the public out there some depth and some understanding that goes beyond superficiality of social networks. However, this combination of content and social networks will create, as I said, transparency as well. Because from now on, journalists cannot do whatever they want to do without immediate feedback. You write an article, you receive hundreds, sometimes thousands of comments of people who agree or disagree, of people who correct information or people who could add to you. And I believe this is positive. We should embrace it. If our model is to put the human being at the middle of our editorial policy, then yes, we need to embrace this model and we need to open up for people's opinion and to enrich our data and information by the feedback. The third element is finance, which is definitely going to be as well very important in the way that we do things. Finance for a while has been controlled either by the state or controlled by corporations who have money. Both models means that traditional media and mass media is in fact a tool in the hand of either the political elite or the commercial elite. In both cases, we cannot put the human being at the center. We have to put the interest of politics and the interest of business at the center. In both cases, we will fail the public. We need to come up with new models of finance that could liberate us from centers of power and put us back, or put the human being back at the center of our interest. That might be the most difficult amongst the three major venues that lead to the circle where the human being is sitting. In my opinion, we need to think of models of crowdsourcing finance as well, where people own and people protect and people provide news and people follow up and people correct. In this case, maybe financing, which is, in my opinion, getting a little bit easier than ever because technology is cheaper than ever. The camera that we used to have 6-7 years ago used to cost us more than $120,000, the professional one. Nowadays, a small camera of maybe not the 3,000, even less than that, has high definition quality, could do as good as the massive camera that we used to have a few years ago. Technology is playing in our side as far as the finance is concerned. Decentralization through networks is playing in our hand. We don't have to have massive newsrooms and huge studios equipped with the late state-of-the-art technology for the model of integral media in order to put the human being at the middle. Maybe we can compromise on that for the sake as well of not being controlled by centers of power. So the new model of finance should be decentralized. It should not be owned by a single actor, and it should not at the same time aim at creating the state-of-the-art quality as far as the image is concerned, but the state-of-the-art quality because of the interest of the public is concerned. The quality is easier to generate with people who believe in a mission, the quality of the content, but unfortunately sometimes when it comes to the quality of the screen and the branding and technology and whatever the case, you might need to have much more investment in it. So definitely that is a challenge that maybe all of us, those who are working in media, should think about, and combined with those who work in finance and those who can develop new models based on new social interactivity can generate new models of decentralized finance that the people play a major role in rather than those who have the wealth and the power. Now, to conclude, I would like to put the following challenge as well in front of you. What does networking mean for our traditional organizations? You saw what happened in the Arab world. In the Arab world, during the last 10 years, every one of us realized that we are going through a crisis. Everyone realized that we are in front of a corrupt reality. But our opposition could not, in fact, do huge change within this reality, because the opposition and governments shared the same problem: aging, hierarchical structures that could not generate alternatives, that were not dynamic, that were not spontaneous, and they are not at the same time imaginative. Governments fail to imagine the future and fail to act upon change. Opposition failed to imagine the future and failed to act and to put an alternative. Therefore, we were living in a deadlock. People don't like what they see, but at the same time, they don't imagine what kind of change that they could create. There was on the corner of this whole scene of government and opposition actually interacting with each other, there was on the side something growing in the Arab world called networks. Now, networks is a revolution within the administrative structural mind that the human being has encountered for the last few centuries. Because the network is flat, the network by nature is democratic. Once you join your network, you don't have to be ideologically embracing one or other concept. You don't have to be from a very famous tribe or a royal family or from certain kind of group or sect in order to be empowered by the network. In fact, you don't even need to have your name presented to the network. The moment you are in the network, you are a member of the network. You have the same rights and duties. And the more you give to the network, the more you are elevated, accepted, followed by the members of the network. So the concept of democracy within networks was established in our Arab reality before the concept of democracy was established in a Tahrir Square or within our new arriving regimes and governments. The second, imagination. Networks are more imaginative. Thoughts and ideas are without borders. People do not tie their imagination to the interest, and they do not definitely tie it always to the necessities and to the constraints that political groups and parties have. If you are a member of a political group or party, you have organizations to protect. You have individuals to protect. You have achievements to protect. If you are a member of a network, you don't actually have anything to protect besides your voice and your opinion and your future. So this is, again, was great source of imagination. The third one, actually, this dynamic, great attitude of creating alternatives spontaneously, without the need in a party. If you need to suggest a march or demonstration, you need to submit that to those who are above you, and them to the guys on top, and them to the line, organizers. It reaches a council of shura or a council of whatever the case, and then they have to judge and decide about it. A decision within a political party is exactly like the decision within a government, controlled by constraints and interests. But a decision within a network could be taken by someone as a suggestion, embraced in a few minutes or a few hours or a few days by thousands, hundreds of thousands or millions, and it becomes a reality without the need of this kind of pyramid-like strategy of ascending decisions for ratification. That was important and empowered our public with a new way of doing things rather than the aging way of our political groups and movements that have led in this Arab world. Networks created new reality within the society itself, within the framework of analysis that we are living in, within the psychology of our masses and our public. And then it created that within our reality when it moved from the virtual to the real in a Tahrir Square or in Tunisia or at Tahrir Square in Sana'a, whatever you call it. So alternative was created, then was injected in the mainstream. Alternative in media was created in the side, it was injected in the mainstream. It was by necessity, not by choice, that Al Jazeera and many other networks in the region accepted the content generated by the public to be on their screen. We did not have a choice. We had no choice. And when we embraced that, we discovered that this is a great achievement. We need to continue embracing it. We need to continue work in partnership with the public because it liberated us from authorities and liberated us from necessities and constraints that our organizations and bureaus had in Egypt or Tunisia or Yemen or wherever the case. Again, what about the structure of the media organization? Are we going to continue having 6, 7, 8 layers of management where every decision should be, again, if it is editorial or administrative, go through the system? Is there a way where we can come up with a new alternative, a middle point between the flat structure of the network and the pyramid structure of the organization? This is a challenge that I could not find an answer for. And this is a challenge that I carried with me to many specialists all over the world, and I discussed that with them, and all of us realized that we are in front of a challenge. If we find the solution we are going to make a revolution within administration and with the style of management of news organizations, and as well, not only news organizations. And I argue that this is a revolution within the knowledge of administration by large. How to come up with a solution for this, and in my opinion, it's going to happen. How and when? This is a contribution that I call upon everyone to participate in, a challenge that everyone should find a way forward for. The flat network, the pyramid-like structure are not going to continue as they are. They have to converge and find a middle ground that will enable all of us to be dynamic, creative, but at the same time organized and centered around certain values and missions. How that's going to happen, I still have to see some convincing model, in fact, of how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Thank you very much for this, but I would like to leave you with one thought and one idea. This great tradition of what we call journalism started when people decided to narrate reality and to pass it to the public, to empower them with information, to convert this information into knowledge. Once you are a knowledgeable human being, you can have informed choice. If you don't have the knowledge, you cannot be informed and you cannot have the choice. We are going through huge transformation at this moment in time in the Arab world. A transformation that was created by this new dynamics, by this integral concept of media, liberation of our capabilities, and the departure from the norm of conventional wisdom of submitting yourself to the trend and of the sovereign individual that has started to dominate our screens and to dominate our streets. However, transformation from now on needs also some kind of tools that enable us to create consensus on politics, consensus on economy. The fragmentation of a revolution cannot continue to be the norm when you are building a society. In building societies, drafting constitutions, establishing stability, going to prosperity of economy, you need to agree on overarching values. And that means dialogue, peaceful dialogue, informed dialogue, not concentration on the fragmentation. Where media could play a major role, local media in particular, in the Arab world, which in my opinion is going through huge crisis. It is opinionated, full of rumors, gossips, utilized by political groups and parties. It is not going to do favor to us. Local media in the Arab world, local news TV stations, newspapers, websites in Tunisia and Egypt, in Yemen, wherever you go in this Arab world, should go through this moment of transformation and should realize that their contribution to the human being, to the future of their countries, to the stability of their democracy is going to be through informed journalism, through responsible journalism that could create this kind of discussion and dialogue and take us forward to the future. I wish if we could see in the Arab world news channels in every Arab country that has this kind of commitment to professionalism, but alliance with the public and centered around the interest of the public. This is the moment where these news channels could succeed. Not only succeed, they could also lead us towards stable democracy and a prosperous economy. Thank you very much.